We are live. Let's get ready to podcast.
Fire it up.
Welcome back to another live and amplified Indie Fusion podcast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we are back at it again with another amazing podcast. Today, we have a very special guest joining us. We have Stellaluna. How's it going today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's like fake spring here in Texas right now because it's like 70 or 80 degrees, but we all know it's going to go below freezing here in the next week. So it's like, enjoy it while you got it, you know?
Yeah.
So excited to have you here. Excited to chat. How's everything been going? I know you just dropped a new song today.
Yeah, I did. Came out last night. It's called Yellow Line. And yeah, I'm pretty excited about it.
Nice. Did you get a good night's sleep or were you up tossing and turning all night?
When I release a song, I usually stay up till midnight just to make sure it actually comes out, just in case. I don't know what I would do if it didn't, but so I did stay up till midnight just to see, but I don't know. I've done this a few times before, so I was pretty okay with it.
Fair. And, you know, that's actually probably a good practice to be in because it's like if it doesn't come out or there's a technical issue, you could at least throw something up on Facebook and Instagram and be like, hey, there's technical issues. We're trying to figure it out. We'll let you know. And even if you go straight to bed right afterwards, at least people know like, hey, we're not missing something, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's really cool. So what's the story behind the song?
The song, I wrote it many years ago, actually, probably around 4 years ago. I work on things for a long time before they come out. It's basically a song about how, I don't know, when you love someone and you love them really fiercely, you would go to any kind of extents just to have a little interaction with them. So that's kind of the whole story of the song is just different, I don't know, things you would do like swimming through space just to hold someone's hand.
Sure. I feel that. And so you said you like to work on things for a long time. At what point do you kind of decide, okay, this song is done or ready to go?
It's really mostly a feeling. I produce all my stuff and I do the mixing and mastering too. So I have a little checklist I go through once the song passes. Like it sounds good in my headphones, sounds good in the car. I hear from at least 5 other people that it sounds good. Then I feel like it's done and that's it. But it's hard to tell.
Right. Actually, that's really good sound advice. Like one of my buddies who's a sound engineer, like for a while there, I was trying to start playing around with like doing some like basic mixing and stuff because we were doing like acoustic sessions and I needed to be able to get stuff turned quickly and waiting on a mixer just wasn't really an option. And so I started playing around with it. And he was like, the biggest trick is if you could find the cheapest, terriblest sounding headphones or speakers or whatever and get the mix to sound halfway decent, then you're on the right track. So
yeah, most people aren't listening on fancy speakers. So
right. Because that's like the issue is everybody mixes to, they're using like the Beats by Dre or whatever, and all that's got technical stuff that makes everything sound amazing. And then they wonder why on the radio their stuff sounds like hot garbage.
Yeah.
So is that something that you've always done, is like mixed your own music, or was that something that like interested you early on?
Really, in 2020, I started learning how to produce, and I don't know, I've always kind of been the kind of person where I want to have creative control over my projects. Yeah. So producing it was really just kind of natural. And then I was on a limited budget. I didn't know any mixers and I was just kind of slowly did everything myself and took some classes on it. And yeah, I like the independence of that, to be able to do everything myself. And if in the future, I mean, maybe I will work with other mixers or mastering engineers, but I like knowing that I can advocate for what I want the song to sound like.
Oh yeah, for sure. And you know, it's one of those things where like now that you kind of got a good sound understanding of how mixing and mastering and all that stuff works, and you know kind of what works for you and your voice and your style when you do ultimately decide, okay, I'm ready to take it to the next step. I can only get myself so far and I'm trying to get here. So I need to find somebody that can help me. At least you know how to communicate and not sound like a bumbling idiot. You get
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
exactly. Yeah.
You know, because it's like, I think that's something that a lot of musicians kind of underestimate is the knowledge of basic production will get you very far.
Yeah, I can say exactly, okay, this needs an EQ on this and I think that makes communication a lot easier.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So growing up in Maine, where does like the music start to come into play? Was that something that was just kind of always there? Did you find it on your own? You know?
I was writing songs since as far as I can remember. Like my mom told me she used to come in and have to tell me to go to sleep because I would be in my crib just singing little melodies. And I just, I don't know, I've always loved music. And my dad played guitar. I was always impressed he can play any instrument. And I've just, I don't know, kind of followed in that footstep of, I don't know, I've just always been interested in music. And I started playing some open mics here. And then I started getting some gigs and just kind of slowly taking things to the next step. But I've always been a writer.
Nice. And at that time, who were you kind of like early on? Were you just kind of singing like pop top 40 type stuff, or was there a certain type of music you were listening to and kind of singing?
I don't know. I mean, I was definitely a pop girl. I listened to a lot of Taylor Swift growing up, but I also I loved Bon Jovi. I love Slippery When Wet. I love that album. And I listened to the Beatles too. So I had just kind of I had the influences of what I would hear on the radio on the school bus and then what my parents would be listening to. So that was kind of where I leaned, just kind of in between there.
Gotcha, gotcha. You know, it's cool to have multiple different influences, and I think that's really the interesting part of this generation of musicians that are coming in and are kind of breaking into the industry right now is they're not necessarily defined by genres because they were influenced by there's so many different types, you know?
Yeah, now with streaming, you can hear anything you want to
Yeah.
hear whenever you want. And there's any indie artist can put their stuff out there and have this whole new sound. And so there's definitely less defining of genres these
Mhm.
days,
Oh
which
yeah,
I
for
think is
sure.
good.
Yeah, for sure. Now, growing up, you said that you were always kind of singing, you know, in the crib or, you know, what have you. At what point did you kind of start like, hey, this is something that I need to be doing?
I don't know. I think when I started learning how to play guitar and I started writing, because I would write a lot of songs, just lyrics and melody. But then I started teaching myself how to play guitar when I was maybe 12 or 13. And I started writing these songs and hearing from people that they were actually good songs. And I realized that that's what I wanted to do. And I felt a lot of catharsis from writing songs about my experiences. And I just enjoyed it so much that I kind of knew that that would always be a part of my life.
Nice, nice, nice. And were you like when you first started like pursuing music, were you concerned about growing up in Maine that like I don't what's the scene like in Maine? I can't imagine there's much of an independent scene, but
I mean, there's a little bit. I mean, there's people playing in restaurants. There's some of that. There's not too many studios.
mm,
There's not a big scene at all like that. So I kind of knew. I never thought that I would want to live in Maine my whole life. I always thought about moving to a city. And I did. I moved to Boston and lived in Boston for a little over a year when I was 19. But I didn't find, there's still a music scene there. But yeah, it was definitely a concern, but it was nice to feel a part of the little music scene that we
yeah.
have here.
Yeah. When I mean that, because like the one thing that I've talked to a lot of musicians about is like one of the most common like goal for a lot of musicians is to visit all 50 states, and Maine always seems to kind of be that constant state that people have not been to and don't know when they'll go there, just because it's so there's nowhere else to go once you go to Maine. Like once you go up to Maine, you're not going any further east. Like you'll end
Yeah.
up in the water, unless you're going to Canada or something. But so it's just interesting, and like the fact that you're there wanting to like help develop an independent scene is really cool, because like I think every state, every city needs a healthy independent scene that isn't just cover bands playing the top 40 or whatever subgenre that they're claiming. So just having a nice healthy originals independent scene is always a good play. So
Yeah. A lot of work is also done remotely now for music, so I I don't think there's as much of a need
mhm.
to travel and live in Nashville, depending what you want to do. But there's yeah. Here where I live in Maine too, it's a big touristy state. Like a lot of things are just closed throughout the whole winter,
Yeah,
because it's a beach town.
yeah.
So I yeah, it's a lot of, cover bands playing at restaurants. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, they sound great. But yeah, there's definitely a smaller music scene than I wish there was.
For sure. Since you're mixing and mastering your own music, do you find other independent musicians in your area kind of coming to you to ask for help or to mix and master their music?
It's less people in my area and mostly people I meet online. Like I have some friends in Boston who I've talked about mixing their work for them, and I don't know. I've had some people where I've sung for them on their songs, but I yeah, I'm not as connected to people around here as I'd like to be.
Gotcha. 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 And is that just because the scene is so spread out, or is it just because it's such a more cover band heavy area that it's harder to find original independent musicians?
I think just because it's more spread out.
Yeah.
I know I play at the Levitt Theater sometimes in the Gunkwit. It's
Yeah.
this really cool venue, but they're not like 100% music oriented. They do movies
Yeah.
and they have a whole restaurant there too. So I meet a lot of musicians through there, and that's kind of the only time that I feel like I'm talking to a lot of
Yeah.
independent songwriters and musicians.
Yeah, for sure. We actually just got a Levitt amphitheater here in Texas. Was that 2 years ago, I think? Like they were doing a whole campaign to see where they were going to go to next, and we ended up getting one of the slots. And yeah, it's I've not been to it yet, just because it's kind of in an odd part of town, like right up against the river, I think. And it's just like, there's not much parking over by the river, so I'm good. You know.
Yeah. I think what I'm talking about might be a different place though, because it's just a family owned. It's
Oh,
just one
okay.
place.
Gotcha, gotcha. Fair, fair, fair. When you said Levitt, I was like, well, there's only got to be like one Levitt, right? I don't know.
You'd think.
Yeah. Um, so obviously you just dropped your new single last night, this morning. Um, where's kind of your headspace at right now? Like, what are you worrying about? What are you thinking about?
I'm worried. I'm thinking about how to get people to listen to it for sure. I made a little music video with one of my friends, and so I'm thinking about when I'm going to put that out and just navigating posting on social media and doing promotion for it and ideally trying to find some gigs. I have a gig in a couple weeks that I'm thinking about planning for.
Nice.
Yeah, I am not good at posting on social media, and it's not something that I enjoy too much. Which I feel like a lot of artists feel that way, but it's something you have to do to, I don't know, to be heard. So I'm thinking about how I'm going to promote it in that way.
Fair, fair, fair. I think the trick to posting on social media is like, because social media is one of them things where it feels like the more professional it looks, or the more exotic it looks, or the more like visually appealing it looks, it's like, oh, that's what's going to get the views. And in reality, from my perspective, is it's how authentic you're being. Like if you're having a bad day and you post a video crying because something happened or, you know, like whatever, but it's real, it's like I think people relate to that a lot more. And just
Honestly, yeah.
kind of finding the real in it in a world of fake posting and like screenshots of a moment that was lasted like 3 seconds and it's like, oh, this beautiful sunset that lasted for all of 3 minutes. You know, people equate that to that's how you're living your entire life, but 5 minutes prior you were just getting your butt chewed out because you did something wrong, you know. So
Yeah. I think people really crave authenticity too. So maybe I need to post a video of me crying. Maybe I'll do that.
I mean, only if it's authentic to you. You know, it's just one of those things where I think because something that I found with social media is when I'm forced trying to force something out, that's when my analytics just go like this. But when it's like something that it's like I actually believe and I actually feel and I put it out there, that's when like the reality comes in, you know?
Yeah. And does
So,
it really matter what you're posting if it's not true to yourself? Even if you get a million views, it doesn't feel as good if it's not
right.
authentic.
Because people are going to hate on you. People are going to call you out for it. Like if you say something like you feel like you're trying to make a point or whatever, but then 3 weeks later you say something that contradicts the video, people are going to call you out for it. And it's like you're just trying to stay relevant to what the conversation is. And it's like, no, just speak your truth and people will respond
Yeah.
to it. So
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's the trick with social media right now is the authenticity is key.
Yeah.
So, so kind of looking forward now that you got the single out, are you looking at the next release or where are you kind of at creatively?
I have an album I would like to release at some point soon. I have a lot of songs from it. I just haven't really narrowed it down yet, and I haven't finished all of the songs. So, really, the next thing I'm thinking about is which song I'm going to release next and kind of where I want to go with that album cycle.
Nice, nice, nice. And are you playing shows consistently or not as much?
Not as much anymore. Since I moved back to Maine from Boston, I haven't been playing as consistently. Yeah, I have a show, like I said, on February 14th in Saco, Maine, but I'd like to play more, so I think that's going to be a goal of mine too.
Nice. And so you brought up a couple different times about moving to Boston. What was it about Boston that was just kind of interesting to you, like that you wanted to move there?
I had been a couple times and I had friends who were living there and I it just felt like a place that could be another home
Mhm.
and it really was for a while. I also had been taking classes with Berkeley online with Berkeley College of Music. So, and I'm still in the degree program for that, but I couldn't afford to go in person. So I
Right.
figured, you know what, I'm just going to put all of my savings into living in Boston for a year and making friends and being a part of the scene at Berkeley and having experiences and seeing where it takes me. And it ended up taking me back to Maine. I missed the nature and the
Mhm.
quiet. But yeah, and it's also Boston's really, except for Portland, Maine, Boston's the next closest bigger city
Yeah.
to me. And I I do really love my home here, so I was hesitant to just move across the country to LA or New York.
Yeah.
And it's pretty easy to travel between here and Boston.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That makes 100% sense. Because I was going to say, my follow up question was going to be do you feel like Boston just wasn't a drastic enough move to kind of see where you land in the music scene? But the fact that you enjoy, like, you like being in Maine and you went there to go to school or went there for school and all that stuff, it's like, okay, Boston, that makes sense. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I definitely felt drastic to me, way out of my comfort zone, and I'm proud of myself for doing it for sure. But it also now Boston feels close. Boston feels closer than
Yeah.
before. It doesn't feel that like if I was to move back there, it wouldn't feel that drastic because
Mm,
now it feels so close.
right. 100%. Now, do you feel now since you've made that move and kind of came back home, do you feel a different appreciation for your hometown?
Absolutely, yeah. Um, I I mean I live like 10 minutes from the beach and I missed that so much in Boston. I I definitely have appreciation for the nature and just the quietness of being here and having having a bigger space than my tiny apartment
Right.
and being able to record whenever I want because there's not people yelling outside my window.
Right, right. Because it's like in Boston, I imagine, especially if you're living like in an apartment, it's like you make any kind of noise and everybody's like yelling at you. So,
I know. One of my apartments was at the end of a alleyway and people would come in the middle of the night and be like peeing outside my window and my neighbor would be upstairs with his bed creaking.
right. That's how it was for me in Tallahassee because I lived in Tallahassee, Florida before I moved here to Texas. And Tallahassee isn't a big city, but it's got like two major colleges and it's the state capital. So it's like you've got like all these people that are there for a short time, not necessarily a long time. And so it drives like rent prices and all that stuff up. So I was living in this small, tiny apartment complex and I could hear everything everyone was doing. And at times it wasn't bad until like I had three young bachelors that were fresh out of college, and every other night it was something else. And I'm like, dude, like I get it, but I'm trying to sleep. I got to be at work at 6 a.m. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's frustrating living in a place like that when there's people who maybe aren't in the same headspace as you or in the
yeah,
same life space.
right. And luckily right now it's not too bad, but like where I'm at because I've been here about almost 6 years in the same place, and everybody's kind of in the same lifestyle pace that I am. So it's like, okay, cool. Let's keep it there.
That's
So
good. Everyone's asleep at the same time. No one's out honking their horns.
no. Those are all the people that live up at the top of the hill, and it's like they're far enough away from me, so we're good. I'm happy. Plus, I live in the back, like the back of the property, and so I couldn't hear anything if I wanted to. So
Nice.
yeah. So kind of outside of music, when you do get a few minutes to yourself or whatever, what do you like to do? What are some of your hobbies outside of the industry?
I like to read. I in the summer especially like to sit outside and read at the beach. I like to paint too, do some visual art. That's kind of something I do that's that's most for myself. And I also really like learning. Like I'm taking some classes at a community college around here. I'm still taking classes with Berkeley. And yeah, that's kind of my main thing.
Uh,
Yeah, just kind of thinking of things I can do for myself that aren't necessarily for my career is good.
Nice. That's really cool. And you said you like doing visual art. Do you like design all your like cover art for your music as well, or is that somebody else that does that?
No, I do. I really do everything. Um, I I do photography too. So for all the songs I've released, that's photos I've taken and designed. And yeah,
Nice. So I have to ask because I'm a little bit of a camera nerd. What kind of camera are you using?
I use a Nikon D300.
Nice.
Yeah,
I,
it's pretty. It's kind of an old camera, really heavy.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Nikons tend to be like I use a Nikon D7500 for like video and stuff, and it's basically because it was one of the first DSLRs that I found that could shoot 4K and wasn't astronomically expensive. And the only reason I don't use it as much as I do is because I've got a cheap kit lens, and so I need to go like invest in some actual glass. But the only reason I haven't yet is because I feel like in the next year or two I'm going to move away from Nikon and need to invest in a whole new lens. And so it's just like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. So
Yeah, they're expensive, so might as well wait until you have something that's going to last you a lifetime.
right. But yeah, no, that's really cool. I had to ask because I went to school for cinema and photography, and although I don't do photography because I just never had, which sounds really weird, like not having the eye for photography, but having it for videography. But
Yeah.
then when you kind of explain it, it's like there is a very distinct difference between photography and videography. So,
Yeah, I get that. I think maybe if anything, I have more. I don't know. I'm trying to learn more about cinematography, and
yeah,
yeah, I'm definitely saving up for a video camera at some point.
yeah.
Yeah,
It,
that stuff is really interesting.
yeah, it definitely like I mean, there's a lot of similarities between the two, but like the lighting strategies are completely different. Like
Yeah.
you've got to think very three-dimensionally with video, whereas photography you're only thinking two-dimensionally in a lot of ways, in a lot of regards. So
Yeah, for sure.
how long have you been doing photography? Is that something that you've kind of always been into, or is that just something like once you started doing your own music, you're like, hey, I probably need to learn this?
It's really something I started in high school with my best friend Sam. We used to take photos together
Hmm.
on like I had this little like teeny camera that was my mom's just for fun, and we would do photo shoots, and yeah, it just kind of stuck. It was never something I planned on doing as part of my music. It was I saw it as separate, but it definitely aids in my artistry for sure.
For sure. I feel that. Um, and then just kind of moving forward, obviously you mentioned you got your show coming up here February 14th. Is what can people kind of expect at this show? Like when you go out and play live shows, what's kind of the vibe you're going for?
I usually play acoustically, just me and my guitar. If I have a shorter set, I'll put together a backing track and play guitar with the backing track. Get my full band, which is
Yeah.
my recorded instruments of me. Um, this show is an hour and a half, so it's a little bit longer. So I will probably just be me and my guitar playing. Mostly, I'll do some originals, some covers. I like to do covers, but put kind of my own spin on them. Just kind of play them in my own way. Yeah, that's kind of the vibe. Pretty
Nice.
acoustic.
I dig it. I dig it. And then I don't want to keep you, so I don't want to keep you here too much longer. If anybody wants to check out your music, any of that fun stuff, where's the best place to find you?
My music is released on all streaming platforms under the name Stellaluna, and my Instagram is at underscore zoodles. And yeah, that's where I'm doing most of my posting and updating.
Fair, fair, fair. So I like how did you come up with that name for Instagram, that handle? Like I know that's like this is always like your government name or whatever, but yeah,
I think it was a nickname that my friends gave me growing up, and it stuck. That was the
fair,
handle, and then I stuck with it.
fair, fair, fair. So is it just one of those things where having a personal Instagram and like a music Instagram was just like I don't want to do it because that's how I am. I don't have a personal Instagram for that exact reason because it's like I can barely manage my professional Instagram. What makes you think I want a personal Instagram?
Yeah, I like to keep them together because my music is also from me, so
Hmm.
it's all interconnected. It's all
Fair,
my artistry is all just me.
fair. I dig it. So you are Stella Luna, and Stella Luna is you.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. I dig it. And then one thing that I want to do here before we wrap this up, what's one piece of advice you have for the young musicians out there?
Oh, I think listen to a lot of music. Listen listen to your gut. Write write what you feel like you have to write and make what you feel like you have to make. Don't think at all about what other people want you to make or what other people are doing. Don't compare yourself to other people. Just make what feels right to you, and yeah, that'll lead you someplace.
Nice. I love it. Who are you listening to right now? Like who's really got your ear?
Right now, I really like Phineas. Suki Waterhouse, I've been really into. Um, yeah, yeah,
Nice.
Suki Waterhouse, Phineas, Taylor Swift, always. Fiona Apple, Tori Amos is one of my favorites.
Nice. Now, Phineas, that's Billie Eilish's brother or something, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not completely out of touch, guys. I promise. Because sometimes I go so deep down the independent rabbit hole where I don't even know who's on the radio anymore. And then, like, every once in a while, like when I'm coming home from work, my phone will be dead. So I'm forced myself to go listen to the radio. And then somebody I had on the podcast like 3 years ago will randomly kind of be on the radio. And it's like, wait a minute, how the hell do I miss this? Like, when did they start getting popped on the radio? So, yeah, it's very funny.
Yeah, that's funny.
But once again, I do really appreciate your time. Enjoyed chatting with you. Hopefully, we get an opportunity to do it again.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. This was great.
Absolutely. And then once again, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will catch you all later. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of Live and Amplified's Indie Fusion podcast. If you'd like to support anything Live and Amplified does, please follow us on all of our social media platforms at Live, the letter N, Amplified. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, YouTube, Threads, any of them, all of them, at Live, the letter N, Amplified. And if you would like to buy any official Live and Amplified merch, you can do so at our merch shop, link in the description below. Once again, thank you all. Have a great day.